All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Today is March 28th, 2024, at just about 10 a.m. And before we get started, we wanted to touch on a couple of housekeeping items. And primarily just as a reminder, during the meeting, if you have a question of either presenter or fellow board member, if you're in the room, to please turn on your microphone. You'll see how they turn red. And if you're concerned that Madam Chair can't see you for some reason, feel free to raise your hand. But we do want to remind you to defer to our chair and let her call on you to ask that question instead of talking across the room. Of course, for folks that are online, just raise your room hand in the Teams function. Just use the raise hand function, and you'll be called on in turn. So just wanted to remind folks of that, so that we are not, and this is not poking at anyone or any group in particular. I'll be sharing this reminders at subsequent other meetings as well. But just wanted to remind folks so that we have appropriate procedures in our meeting, and that we can all participate as best possible. So with that, Madam Chair, we do have a quorum, and you may call us to order and get us started.
Thank you. What I'd first like to do is have the members here at the meeting introduce themselves, and then we'll do the same thing for those online. Laura?
This is Laura Cronick.
Gordon Rick.
And I think we have a couple of people online. Jared, if you could introduce them. It's not Jared.
We have Eric Bidwell, Rosemary, and Maria online.
Did you guys introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Eric Bidwell. I'm a manager with the Department of Human Services here in El Paso County, and I represent El Paso County in general.
Maria?
Maria Cordova. I work for the Independence Center, and we serve Park, Teller, and El Paso counties. We work with people with disabilities.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Jaramillo with the Alzheimer's Association.
Thank you. I'd like a motion to approve the agenda.
This is Laura. I make the motion to approve the agenda.
Bill Bowles, I'll second.
Thank you.
And under discussion on that before we vote, Madam Chair, just wanted to share that the folks from Brothers Redevelopment may not be here until about 11 o'clock. And so I would ask that we have a little flexibility in just filling in, maybe going backwards occasionally until they are in the room with us.
And we can do the open records
Yes,
and meeting first. Great.
Thank you.
Can we have a vote on that to approve the agenda? Say aye.
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 Thank you. Next on our agenda is consent items. And I'd like to have approval of the minutes for February 22nd, unless anybody has any concerns or comments. Can we have a first and a second?
I move to approve the minutes of February 22nd, 2024.
Gordon Rick, I second.
Thank you. Any discussion? And can we have a vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. public comments. What I'm going to do first is I am going to actually read what's been sent out on public comments, and we'll go from there. Public comment can be made before or during the meeting. Public comment during the meeting is limited to 3 minutes and can be done at the meeting location or remotely by using the posted Microsoft Teams link. Individuals are encouraged to notify the meeting organizer before the start of the meeting with the agenda item and they would like to comment on. Public comments can be submitted before the meeting via email for distribution to the committee members. And I just would like to add that this means that any guests that we have that want to that have a question or have any comments, this would be the specific section that this would go in. And my first, do we have anybody who needs to make any public comments? No?
We didn't receive any public comments online.
Thank you. I don't know if it's just me, but I'm having trouble hearing you. If you could speak up the next time. Thank you. And I don't even know your name, so. Cheryl, okay. All right, I'll try to remember that. Okay. So the next item on here is action items.
There are no action items this meeting, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jody. Okay. Next, we're on information items, and it's not anywhere near 11. So I think we'll go on to open records and meeting briefing. And I'm not sure. Jody, are you doing that?
No, Jared is here and will be doing his presentation
great.
for us.
Good morning, RAC members. Jared Werner, Public Information Officer at the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments and for the PPAAA, as well as PPRTA and DriveSmart Colorado, all the other umbrella organizations that we host in our building. This is a presentation that we've been doing to all of our committees, primarily as a, for those who are already familiar with it, a refresher, and for those who aren't familiar with it, a good opportunity to learn what the relevant laws are for open meetings and open records so that you're prepared and you understand what could happen, as well as to help us not unintentionally break the law in the process. And so for open meetings, are you clicking? Just make sure. Sorry about that. So we're going to start on the open records part of it. You might hear referred to as CORA, and it was decided at the state level in 1968, 1 year after the Federal Freedom of Information Act, which you might hear as FOIA, but it's declared to be the public policy of the state that all public records shall be open for inspection by any person at reasonable times. We fall under CORA, not FOIA. FOIA is what our friends at the Department of Defense, Veterans Affairs, anybody who is a federal agency has the FOIA part. We have the luxury of being under CORA. So what falls underneath CORA? There we go. CORA includes documents, both electronic and handwritten, photos and videos, emails, Cheryl, can you click? And it's being slow for me, so I'm going to just keep clicking next. I'm sorry. Teams and other text messages, work-related materials on private devices or accounts. Now, for staff members, a lot of that information is something that we have to be very careful of just because that comes with our jobs. For volunteer boards like this, this will only apply to your work on the rack. And so I don't want to scare anybody, but I also want to make sure people understand what is included and what's not. I've been here for 18 months. We have not had a CORA request yet. Knock on wood. When I was at Public Health during a pandemic, I got a CORA request about twice a week. So it's something, if we have to do it, we're prepared to do so, but we are fairly transparent and open already, so we don't have a whole lot that isn't already public and available. What CORA does not include. So anything that is going to be covered under a privacy protection. HIPAA is going to be the one that we work with the most, especially on the Area Agency on Aging. So any kind of specific client records would not be considered an open record. Personnel records. There's a caveat that unless the person that the subject of those personnel records decides to make it public. But generally, personnel records are not subject to an open records request. Thank you. Legal guidance or privileged information or trade secrets. To my knowledge, we're not dealing in trade secrets. That's primarily if you're doing any kind of like research that's going to have fall underneath the patent. When I was in higher ed, that was something that kind of fell underneath that. And legal guidance or privileged information. So if we are actually talking to a lawyer is clearly the definition. We can't just be talking informally about legal protections. We actually have to be talking to a lawyer to make sure that happens. Not something that the RAC is going to be dealing with, but that is something that CORA does not generally include. Work products is something that is, if we're going to probably deny something, it's probably going to be in that work products category. And that is something to where if we're going back and forth informally, so if we're drafting anything before it's going to be made public, that back and forth is typically not considered an open record. It's going to be something that is going to have, again, most of our stuff is done publicly. We put in our meeting materials, we put it in committees, it's discussed in an open meeting. So it's not going to be something that we're going to use a lot, but if we're going to use any caveat beyond the personnel or the privacy, that's probably going to be in our network products category. But in doubt, assume that anything that's generated as part of your work on the RAC could be subject to an open records request. If we just kind of start with that, then we can figure out from that part if it's something that's going to be covered. And to help kind of level set this and help put this in a frame of reference, we don't get to determine for the public what is important to them. They get to make that determination. And unless we have a reason to withhold it, then we are obligated to release it. So what does that process look like? I get the luxury of being the public information officer as being the CORA point of contact. And so anybody can request a document for any reason. They don't need to tell us why they need the requested information. Now, a lot of times I might ask them, you know, especially if it's going to be a big request, that's going to eat up a lot of time because we are allowed to charge for our time after a certain amount of time. But if they're going to ask us for something that's going to take us 40 hours to produce, that might be where I have that conversation with them and ask, what are you looking for? Like we're willing to help you out. If nothing else, just I have better things to do with my time. And so if it's something that you're looking for this massive pile of information that in reality is really specific, then let's amend your CORA request to make it specific. It saves you money, it saves you time, it saves me time. Now, they're not obligated to tell me. They might say, nope, I want all the data and I will pay whatever it is. Okay, that's fine. But if it's going to be a big request because we can ask for a portion of it up front as kind of essentially a guarantee. But that's just the process. They don't have to tell us if they don't want to. Once they tell us that, hey, I want these records, we have 3 days to either fulfill, deny the request, ask for clarifying information to fulfill the request, or ask for an extension. And that extension is going to be like, it's going to take a while to compile all the data you asked us to compile. And we promise to have it to you in 2 weeks or something like that. Debbie.
Yeah, I just have a question. What would cause you to deny a request?
If it falls underneath those categories, so if it's a privacy protection, if it's legal guidance, if it's privacy, personnel, legal guidance, or work product. There's other categories as well, but those are the big four that we're probably going to look at. Now, if it's, say we might block out information. So like if it's something to where there's within a determined record, there is privacy concerns within that record, then we can go in and blot it out. Again, that takes time, that takes energy for us to do that. But to this point right here, we're only required to provide the information that is requested of us. Sometimes there's an inclination to provide more information either for context or for additional, if they're asking for something that went into a decision, sometimes there's a inclination to provide more information for background, but we're not required to do that. And if I can keep going. And then that second sub bullet, we are not required to create a new record to fulfill a request. And what that means is, say someone asks us, they want to see the number of times something happened while also this also happened. And they want us to do everything that falls within that thing. So in the public health world, I'll use this as the example. Because we didn't have the data, the state did, but the county didn't. They wanted to see of the hospital admissions for COVID, how many of those were vaccinated. We didn't have that record. The state did, but El Paso County Public Health didn't. That would have required us to create a new record because that's something that we didn't already have. So to your point, Debbie, that is another thing where if we don't have that record, we're not obligated to create it for them. I would just say we just don't have the record. So it wouldn't be denying the request. It would just say, hey, based on what you asked us, we don't have records.
Would we tell them where they can get that information?
We could, but I'm not required to.
Okay.
Now, I probably would say like, hey, listen, this is, in that situation, I'd say, hey, listen, you need to file this with a different agency. If I don't know the agency, though, I'm not obligated to tell them or do the research for them, essentially. Like I said, if we know it, then we'll do it. Like I said, on the transportation side, because we deal with a lot of data, that's probably where we're going to see that they might look for a correlation. It's like, hey, we want to look at road conditions crossed with accident or crash rates. I honestly have no idea if we had that data already, but if we don't, then they would be up to them to do that research on themselves. And then similarly, I put this here, if information is denied or blacked out, we have to tell them why. It falls under privacy, it falls under personnel record, it falls under whatever. And like I said, we need to cite a specific reason on state statute. I always kind of put this in there. Because it is embarrassing or because it can be taken out of context are not valid reasons for denying a request. So we always kind of tell people, if you don't want the Gazette to publish what you have to say about a certain about a certain subject, please don't put it in an email. Please don't put it in a text message. And I have in here like work-related materials on private devices or accounts. This is something I always tell staff, like, just because you use your personal device to conduct work business does not make it outside of the open records process. The example I always like to give was last summer or 2 summers ago, a state senator switched parties. He used his private phone to do that, not his state issued emails. He did it through a text message. I think the text message even said, I'm doing this to avoid open records requests. The reason we know that he said that is because it came out in an open records request. So just keep in mind that anything like that can happen. Again, been here for a year and a half. We have not had an open records request. We try to do everything as transparent and open as we possibly can. You are not required to know all the nuances and details of Colorado Open Records Act law. That's my job. If for some reason something happens, I'll work with you. But if you're emailing, say one of us, our staff members, we've already got that on our servers. And so, and it's always something I kind of tell people, again, for staff, if I won't be asking, I will be informing you that we are pulling the records. Because if it's something that's on our servers, we already have access to it. Now, don't worry, Jody, I don't. I have better things to do than to go through every single one of your emails. And I'm not doing that, trust me. But if something like that happened, it would be a situation where I'm not asking, I'm telling. So again, we haven't had to worry about that. Knock on wood. Before we go to the open meetings part, any question on open records?
I guess I have one question.
Okay.
So I read all those different things, emails, texts. What about just a conversation among three people at lunch, say?
So unless it was recorded, we don't have anything to like produce, for lack of better terms.
Okay,
And so yeah, if it's a lunch, hallway conversation, something like that, unless someone's recording you while you're doing it, then that wouldn't, we would have nothing to produce on an open records request.
If, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Um, uh, Jared, would you share, and this may be coming, but would you share what that would look like from a quorum standpoint, especially, let's say it were 3 RAC members at lunch, or
Yep,
or with staff?
that'll fit into the open meetings part. So I will cover that, almost that exact same scenario a little bit later. Counselors Chronic and Rick, you guys have probably dealt with this a little bit more. Definitely the open meetings part as we're coming up, and anything that you would add that I forgot. Okay. Okay, let's get to the really fun part, open meetings. Okay, so you might also hear this referred to as the Colorado Sunshine Act or the Colorado Sunshine Law, but this is the open meetings law. This is going to be more relevant to us in our discussion. But is it declared to be a matter of statewide concern and the policy of the state that the formation of public policy is public business and may not be conducted in secret? There have been some actually changes to this law at the state level. Unfortunately, it does not impact locals. So nothing changing at the local level, but the state has decided to rewrite the rules on their end so that a little bit less qualifies as an open meeting at this legislature side. But a meeting is considered any kind of gathering convened to discuss public business in person, by telephone, electronically, or by any other means of communication. That is their way of saying, like, if you hit the open meetings requirement, no matter how you just get there, it is considered an open meeting. Email is considered an open meeting if you're discussing something of public business. Now, if you're discussing something like basic meeting info, you're just deciding when to meet, that is not considered an open meeting. But if you start talking about anything like, well, what do you think about this discussion? Or what do you think about this action item? That crosses into open meetings. And if I'm on that email chain, I will put a kibosh to that right away. But that's not a situation we like to do because it's really hard to declare that it's an open meeting is taking place and to put people on that chain. And then you have people who take people off, and that kind of email open meetings, while permissible, are not something we recommend. We don't outlaw it on the PPACG side just because we want to have that option if for some reason that situation came up and email was the only way we could do it. But it is definitely our last case, break glass case emergency meeting format. Councilmember Chronic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question about, does PPACG subscribe to the same email format that local government does? And by that, I mean, a reply all could constitute inadvertently an open meeting.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Thank
And
you.
that's why a lot of times when I'm sending stuff out, and I encourage other staff to, if we're sending something out to, say, the RAC or Commission on Aging or our board, a lot of times we do it as a blank carbon copy. Because then it takes out that if you do a reply all, you're only replying back to me and anyone else I put in the to or CC line. But it doesn't count everybody in the blank carbon copy to avoid that specific situation. So an open meeting is triggered anytime you have 3 or more members or a quorum of the group, whichever is smaller, where committee business is taking place. The smaller option is usually your smaller counties commissions because they only have 3 county commissioners. 2 is considered a quorum for them. But anytime where it's just a 3-member body, if 2 is your quorum, that is your open meeting criteria For us, it's 3. We don't have any of those groups that are that small. So we are required to provide public notice for all of our meetings. So anytime we expect to have 3 or more members in one group discussing council business, we have to publish as an open meeting. That includes a 24-hour notice. So we have designated our 2 bulletin boards, one off of 7th Street, one off of Chestnut Street, as well as our website as our designated open meeting posting locations. Those notices also have to include potential topics for discussion. It doesn't mean that every topic on that will be discussed, but it's something to where if there's a chance that we could be discussing it from the front end, the public then knows what we're planning to talk about. And then if it's something that staff decides to pull out because, hey, we put it on there just in case it was ready, but we decided to pull it off because it's not ready. A lot of times you see that your larger council meetings where during the agenda approval process, that's a lot of times they'll say, hey, we're pulling off agenda items 10A and 10C and 10J and everything else because it's not ready for discussion. And again, on the 3 or more, if there's a possibility for 3 or more, that's when we would do the open meetings notice. So for example, RAC members are all invited to a ribbon cutting or a groundbreaking or some other event. If you're being invited as RAC members, I would probably put that as an open meetings notice. Even if it's just to say, hey, they're going to attend an event and council business could be discussed. Not saying it will be, but it could be. That's when what triggers that. So for example, we're having an event later today. We could have, and I'm expecting to have 3 or more members of our board of directors in attendance. You'll see the notice if you saw it when you walked in. It's on our website. And if someone wants to show up, they're more than welcome to. They can't participate. There's nothing in the open meetings law that require participation from the public, but they can observe and they have the right to do so. Okay, I think the next slide is when I get into kind of the scenarios. So I stole this from the Attorney General's office. So if it's wrong, I'm going to blame his office. Is it a public meeting? If we're just talking about rulemaking and it's a work session, the answer is yes. Action does not need to take place for an open meeting to be considered an open meeting. If you're just discussing, so a lot of times in our subcommittees, we're just discussing different things, that's considered an open meeting. The next one, side conversations during meeting breaks. A little bit to your point, Debbie, but also if it's a social gathering, yes, that would most likely fall underneath that open meeting requirement. Again, it's 3 or more. That's the thing. If it's happening during a meeting like this, just be mindful. And again, it's only council business. So if you're talking about, hey, you're going to go to the movies tonight, chat away. I don't care. So, if you're going to the movies, going to go see, get a dinner at the same time. Like, just keep that in mind. The next one I think is meals and social events. So, no, but with a big caveat with it. Like I said, if you're being invited as a council member, then I would say that's a yes. If you are just happen to have 3 people going and you're not going to talk about council business, no. This is definitely a gray area, and it's something that if we're going to probably have a violation, it's probably going to be here and it's going to be accidental. And so you're going out, after this meeting for lunch or something like that. And if you're just socializing and you're just talking about, what's happened since the last time you saw each other, great, not an open meeting, doesn't matter. But as soon as you start talking about like, hey, what did you think of that vote? Or hey, I was thinking about this or this topic, please avoid doing that because that would then trip us into a open meetings notification. This next one, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. Discussion about meeting dates and times, we kind of said that no. As long as you're only talking about when an open meeting can take place, you're fine. But again, if you're starting to talk about other stuff and even to that point of what's going to be discussed at the meeting, like an action item, that's where our executive committee really kind of does that, and we publicly notice all those meetings as well. This last one is an interesting scenario because there's actually some cases going through the system right now on this one. Can I meet with someone and then can I relay that information to another member? So I'll pick on staff because staff don't count towards that 3-person requirement. So I have a meeting with Jody. We talk about something. Jody then talks to Cheryl, relays what we and I talked about to Cheryl, and then Cheryl talks about what Cheryl and Jody talked about to me. So we can all try to get on the same page. The answer to that is no. That's called a serial meeting. There's a school board up north that got dinged for that, and went to court over that. But yeah, if you're doing that, especially with the intention of trying to avoid getting 3 people in one room, that is definitely a no-no. And we wouldn't need to open notice that. But similar to like email. So if I'm emailing back and forth with Jody about something, that's fine. But as soon as we add in a third person, that's when things get tricky. Now that would fall underneath an open records request though. So keep that in mind because that's how the state redefined their open meetings, is that rather than open noticing all of their one-on-one meetings, they just make it, you can submit a court request to get that information. So that's how they are navigating that, because at the state level it's 2, but locals it's 3 or a quorum. I don't know if I have 25 more minutes to talk about open meetings and open records, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a clarification, because this is as clear as mud to most of us, you have a meeting, you have a social gathering where 3 or more are there, and it's strictly social, and someone comes up to you from the outside and asks you a question about your position or something that happened in a meeting, then what?
I would politely try to tell them, hey, listen,
Can't talk about it?
can't talk about it, or pull them aside. Now, if it's something you've already talked about in an open meeting, again, it gets gray. But if there's 3 or more members and you're, again, it's just social. And a lot of times that kind of definition is more like accidental. So you happen to all go to the same restaurant, not planned. And it's like, oh, council members, and you guys just start chatting about, hey, how your kids doing at school and that kind of stuff. You're fine. But then someone from the public comes up, it's like, hey, like I see 3 council members all in the same spot. I would either politely say, hey, listen, that's going to get us in, that we're really talking about that, or have that one-on-one conversation.
So we could carry little signs along with this and just flip up the.
Yep. Don't talk to me. No, you definitely don't want to do that. But but a lot of times, like the city of Colorado Springs, for example, a lot of their stuff goes through a single person for scheduling. My assumption is part of the reason is for that is A, they can see if they need to schedule a meeting, but B, if they see that, hey, we've got 3 or more members all planning to go to this one event, and then they're noticed it. So a lot of times you might see on their public notices a groundbreaking, where they were invited as council members, and I think the language they use is that city business could be discussed. They don't get into specifics about like what kind of city business, but if it's saying, hey, we're going to the groundbreaking of this event, 3 or more members may be in attendance and city business may be discussed, that's where people like me have a lot of fun at trying to
Appreciate it. Thank you.
coordinate schedules. Yeah.
So I also have a question. So we have these senior fairs coming up where we'll have a table.
Mhm.
And of course, we have a list of what they are. So as soon as we know for sure that we're going to have a table there, that becomes, and there could be more than 3 of us there.
It's when there's 3 or more RAC members that could be there.
Thank you.
Yep.
So a couple things. Being on the city council in Fountain, we've had to go through training. So first off, I would caution everyone on carpools. 3 or more members in a carpool can constitute a meeting. So be careful when you're carpooling to an event or to Denver to testify or to come to these meetings. You got to be careful on that. Going back to your open records request, you are correct that personnel records are exempt unless it is a performance review that is prepared by the committee. For example, if this RAC was to do a performance review on Jody, since we are a public organization, even though it's a personnel record on Jody, because we as a group prepared it, then it would be an open records. So you have to, you're right, personnel records are exempt unless the committee is involved in the personnel records, then it becomes open. With regards to the scenario of, 3 or more people are at a social meeting and somebody comes up and asks you a question. The advice the attorney gave us was, if somebody comes up to you in a social setting and you're not discussing meeting, the first thing you can't do is say, you can't be around us. We're talking socially. You can't exclude somebody when they show up. If they do come into your meeting or your group and say, hey, I want to talk to you, the city attorney advised us, well, let me go over here. Let's go over here and we'll talk about it separately rather than try and talk about it as a group. Because even then, even if you say, well, that's a public question, if it's being discussed among more than 2, then it becomes a problem. So you're probably better off saying, well, let's go over here and we can talk about that rather than trying to incorporate it into the group. But excellent presentation so far. Thank you very much. Just throwing those thoughts out there.
Nope, thank you. And you two are unique in that you deal with this much more often than most of our committee members. So.
Joe, that's okay. I saw you raise your hand.
And if you could hit your microphone, the one that, there you go. Thank you.
All right. If this accidentally happened, as you very clearly described, is it, and the conversation happens, then what? Does it need to be declared as this open meeting happened, or is it documented anywhere? What's the next step?
So that's a very good question, because, and this is something I'll ask my council members to chime in on. I don't know.
I'm glad I asked that question.
Yeah, no, and it's, again, we try to prevent it from happening on the front end at all possible. I would probably document it just to show that it happened. And if anyone asks, like, yes, it and detail the circumstances. It was accidental. It was not intentional. This just happened. And try to understand what was discussed and what wasn't. Just because if someone does ask, I was like, well, they were meeting in the dark alleyway and they planned all this out and then they came to the public meeting. Okay, dark alleyway scenario before a public meeting, a little bit easier to say, yes, that was a clear violation. But if there was public meeting discussed, a lot of times, you'll bring it up and discuss it at the open meeting. But if some sort of decision like that was made, then it has to be either briefed out in public or something like that. There is a scenario for a closed meeting. The RAC does not have that ability. Only the board of directors does. And for our board meeting, it is typically for the evaluation of our executive director. In a closed meeting like that, no action can be taken. And that is incredibly explicit that no action can be taken. You're discussing, usually very candidly, again, you're talking about someone's job performance. Those can be very just open, very candid for the person who's being evaluated. If it's not a good evaluation, potentially embarrassing. The record of that evaluation, once it's decided in public meeting, is definitely a public record. But again, that's a lot of times another situation for a closed meeting is legal guidance. So similar to the open records part, where if it's legal guidance or legal advice, that can be closed. Similar to an open meeting, closed meeting. If it's legal advice, which again, the RAC is not going to be receiving legal advice, it's going to be our board. Those can be closed because you might be detailing strategy, you might be detailing how you're going to approach a potential lawsuit or a case. Those are scenarios that don't happen here. But if it happens accidentally, like I said, this is part of this discussion, is to hopefully try to prevent those as much as possible.
And you said to be documented if this, to go back to the very beginning of your explanation, which I thank you for, where should it be documented? Who should document that?
I would say first start with Melissa Martz, who is the primarily staff liaison for this, and then we'll figure it out on our end. A lot of times in that scenario, it's accidental, it's not intentional.
Yeah.
There is a lot of, I'd say, forgiveness when it comes to that. Like I said, that one-on-one to try to do the group meeting that way, there is intentionality with that, which is why they were sued for that. There's a lot of, especially smaller, and there was an individual who was going after school districts pretty aggressively a couple years ago because they were, stuff like this happened to be accidental. He found out about it. He sued the school district, and I think was getting about $5,000 a pop in legal fees. And it was very predatory, if that's the right word for it. Because there is the Colorado Freedom of Information Coalition. And even the people who work in that coalition was like, these are volunteer boards. They may, they're not dealing with open meetings law consistently like elected officials or clerks or lawyers who are doing this kind of stuff. That was clearly accidental. Yes, did they violate it? Yes, but it was not with malice. It was not with intent. But this individual was successfully suing and charging, had incurred about $5,000 in legal fees, and
Yes.
it was a great money-making opportunity. But that's why I say this on the front end, because I don't have $5,000 in my budget to just hand out for open meetings violations. Now, if there's intentionality behind it, I can guarantee you it's not going to be $5,000. So,
okay. Thank you.
Yep. I sufficiently scared everyone enough.
Any other questions? Thank you, Jared.
Thank you all again. It's not something we have to worry about a whole lot here, but it is something that I want to make sure everyone's aware of so that we don't accidentally violate the law. So thank you all.
Madam Chair, I'd like to recommend that we go ahead with 6B with the membership committee and start working through our information items, and then we can just pause when the folks from Brothers Redevelopment arrive.
Great. And so we'll start with the membership subcommittee, and that's Maria. Do you have any report or anything to give?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Not at this time. I do not.
Thank you. Next is the Strategic Review Committee, and that's Laura. And Laura, do you have a report?
Well, we had a meeting on the 20th, and we had a lovely presentation on digital equity, literacy, and inclusion in Colorado. And I have a question. Is this posted? Is the slide deck posted to the website?
I don't think it has gotten there because Melissa left for a conference, so I'm not sure that it's gotten that far yet.
Okay.
Is that?
We're talking to Commission on Aging meeting from last Wednesday.
Correct.
Yep. The slide deck, not separately, but that meeting file is available for anyone who wants to review it.
Do we intend to post the slide deck?
We can.
I think it'd be great because I thought the meeting was fabulous, and the presentation was very well done. And this should be available to anybody that would want to see it, look at it, use it, etc.
Thank you. Yeah, it would be part of the presentation file itself, the recording, so that if someone went in to watch the Commission on Aging meeting, they would see that as part of the recording. But we can include it. The nice thing about it being part of the recording is fully in context, along with the presenters, the presentation itself from Melanie from the state. But we can look into that. Adding that separately.
Given that, I think that's, if we could point them to that and let them know that the presentation is included there, please look at or please watch or whatever. I think you're right. The context was equally as as good. And just to look at the slide deck, you kind of go, ho hum. But yeah,
Right.
I agree with you.
Yeah, there was excellent conversation. So, yeah, I think Jared and I will take a peek at that and see how we might point to that. And then, but we'll let you continue.
Well, we presented the update of the blueprint. And I believe that also is on the website, so it's available to anyone that wants to look at it. We did that for the 4 areas that we're focusing on, which are transportation, broadband, a biggie these days, information and assistance, and DEI. And there was a lot of discussion about volunteers and volunteering and that sort of thing as well. Obviously, there weren't any grand conclusions that came out of this. A lot of information passed, and I think it was an exceptionally well done meeting. A lot of good information. Questions?
Madam Chair, we do have a hand up. Maria, did you have something?
Well, I was just going to add that I started going to the Digital Equity Committee meetings, and on their website, they do post slides and recordings from past meetings, and they do have a lot of really good information on their website. Would you like to share that in the chat?
Yeah, I'll add it to the chat.
Just a reminder, folks online can't see us nod, so we do have to provide an audible affirmation. We have some awesome new cameras, but they may not be able to see that.
And I just want to add, Laura, that I think it was really great because I think the Council on Aging doesn't really have any sense necessarily of what this committee does. So I think it was really helpful. Thank you.
You're right. Thank you.
Madam Chair, we have been, we as staff have been talking a little bit more about how we can create some crossover by effectively creating opportunities for RAC members to attend the Commission on Aging meetings and vice versa, so that not only would someone from the RAC attend that Commission on Aging meeting, but then also have an opportunity within the agenda to report out. So more to come on that, but we want to increase that crossover of information so that both of the committees have a better understanding of what each other is doing, especially since they have very specific and delineated roles within the community and within the AAA. So more to come on that as we sort that out.
Thank you for that, Jody. It looks like we still have about 10 more minutes, so maybe we can go on to the TRS subcommittee RFP dates and meetings, and then Jody's going to report on that.
Sure. Cheryl, did I hear you say someone else had a hand up?
I just wanted to let Maria know that we'll probably send that in an email.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. So, as you know, the TRS met in February, reviewed recommendations of funding allocations. This time, because we did approach the transportation funding kind of a holistic approach, effectively taking into consideration Federal Transportation Authority funding. That's the FTA 5310 funds that Laura Cruz, our mobility manager, oversees. But then also she helps coordinate the AAA funding specifically around transportation as well. And so that was part of the TRS meeting. It also went before our Transportation Advisory Committee. That's the TAC under our umbrella organization, PPACG. And then at the recent March board meeting that was opened for a 30-day comment period. And I will clarify that that's specifically an FTA requirement of that 30-day public comment period. Within AAA funding, the public comment period is not required. The public comment into the allocations is actually done through our technical review subcommittee. And so that 30-day comment period is open right now, and we'll close. I have April 14th, Laura. Is that correct? That would be 30 days from the March 13th meeting, so that will close on April 14th. The final allocations will come before the Regional Advisory Council during the April 25th meeting. We will hold an abbreviated business meeting before we move into our annual provider fair that morning. So it'll be part of our regular meeting. We are then those numbers will go before, those allocations will go before our PPACG board for contingent approval in May. We have not received our option letter yet from the state and the feds around our Older Americans Act and Older Coloradans Act funding, and so there is a good chance that we will be coming before the RAC in April and the board in May with contingent numbers. Our goal all along the way is to make sure that our contracts are prepared and executed by July 1. I do want to share that I'm going to go ahead, Madam Chair, with your okay. I'll go ahead and roll into the AAA Director's Report.
Yes, great.
Would you mind checking and see if they maybe are standing out in the lobby? I see folks just came in. So there's a lot been going on since we last met. House Bill 24-1211, which was an emergency fund set by the JBC. That's a joint budget committee, did pass. That's a $2 million emergency fund to roll over and not go back to the general fund annually as normal allocations would. And that is going to be available through 2029. It will sunshine in 2029. However, or sunset, excuse me, in 2029. However, there is opportunity for reevaluation of that emergency fund. That is specifically for AAAs for distribution. And we have been working with the state, and the state is also working on exactly what qualifies as emergency. But we do know by the bill language that it is temporary funding for a 90-day period. So, for example, if something, knock on wood, should happen over at Silver Key, I'm going to pick on Jason since he's in the room this morning, but if something should happen in the kitchen at Silver Key and they cannot produce their meals, whether the congregate meals or the home delivered meals, and need temporary funding to bring that back online or find a new location, temporary location, they would have access through us to access those emergency funds, which is really exciting because that's never been a possibility before. But that is currently being reviewed by our administrators at the state to determine exactly how that may be accessed. The Senate Bill 24-40, I think everyone in the room here, except for our recent guests, received email from me this week about Senate Bill 40. Some of the challenges that have been represented there around the initial, while it did pass almost unanimously through the Health and Human Services Committee. It passed 8-1 with very enthusiastic yeses. However, it was not included, the funding for that was not included in the long bill. And so there is an advocacy effort going on right now this week to encourage our House members to vote for an amendment to that bill, which would add that funding back in. And so more to come on that. I appreciate those of you who've reached out to me to confirm that you were able to send letters or contact House members around that. I also sent out letters to all House members, but then I also sent notes specifically one-on-one with our immediate and regional House members, reintroducing myself as I usually do, and sharing the direct need for Region 4, considering El Paso Park and Teller counties. And so, Madam Chair, if it's all right with you, I will go ahead and just pause here. I do have more to share from our federal visits a couple of weeks ago, but I would like to call up our guest from Brothers Redevelopment to share.
And Jody, if I can.
Oh, yes.
Pump the brakes on
Please.
that. We're still
Yeah,
getting
you bet.
everything put together.
Oh, okay.
So
all right.
feel free. Go
I'm
ahead.
going to keep going then. All right. You let me know, Jared, when we're ready. So, Madam Chair, you mentioned senior expos, and so we actually have several that the Area Agency on Aging will be participating in, and those of you RAC members are receiving those emails from Melissa, our staff liaison, to ask for your participation. And so we'd love to have you join us at these senior expos this spring, and now there'll be one into the fall. The next one coming up is going to be hosted by the Pikes Peak Senior News Magazine. That'll be April 24th at the Antlers Hotel. And so if you're available to join us there, meet the public, answer questions, I would also encourage you to recruit them as to the RAC as fellow RAC members. And so these are all excellent opportunities for recruiting additional RAC members. I will share too that date right now is scheduled for our quarterly provider meeting. And so because I expect many of our providers will also be planning to be at the Senior Expo on April 24th, we may be looking at changing that date. So for those of you who also serve as providers, be watching for that potential date move so that we're not trying to spread you too thin. We also have the provider fair on April 25th, and that'll be right here in this room. It's like a senior expo, but it's for you as RAC members to get to know our providers a little bit more beyond what you see on paper as part of their funding requests and beyond what you may hear from them once a year in their presentations. We want to give that opportunity that you can meet them and their staff members, collect some of their information and share that across your community and your circles of influence. So really great opportunity there at the April 25th meeting. Jared, how we coming? Okay, keep going. All right, here we go. So we have a variety of other senior expos that we'll be participating in. We have May 11th with the Gazette at the Colorado Springs Event Center. May 16th, we'll be participating with Silver Key at their senior summit at Great Wolf Lodge. And so I've never been, and so I'm expecting that'll be really exciting to participate in that one. But here in April, we'll also be up in Woodland Park at the Golden Bridge. Senior Fair will also be at the Alzheimer's Memory Walk this year in September, and then with the Gazette again in October. So a lot going on. We're really excited to be able to participate in those and to be able to coordinate and collaborate with our community partners around that as well. Okay, am I still going, Jared? All right, we're still going. Okay, so 2 weeks ago, I had opportunity as a as a U.S. Aging board member, and I will share that over the last couple of 2.5 years, I've been a U.S. Aging alternate board member. Our Colorado board member has resigned her position because she'll be retiring here in June. And so in April, I was elevated to a full board member to finish up her term. So really excited about that. And so I was in DC, Washington, DC 2 weeks ago for that board meeting, but also for the annual aging policy briefing. We heard a lot of information from the administration on community living staff. As you, whether you're familiar with that or not, ultimately they are the administrators of the Older Americans Act, which provides us our directives around how we may use the Older Americans Act funding and also part of the allocation process. But part of that is the encouragement and the opportunity to visit with our federal legislative members. And so we had 4 of us from Colorado, and so we were able to meet with staff members from Senator Bennett's office, Senator Hickenlooper's office, as well as Representative Pedersen's office. And so it was a really great opportunity to speak with them about the aging and adult services that we provide within our region and across the state, but also to continue to advocate for additional funds. And so, we learned a lot through the time of COVID and the public health emergency. And just because the public health emergency has been rescinded doesn't mean that people no longer need services. And as we see the price of goods and services increasing, we also continue to see more individuals reaching out to us and our providers across the 3 counties who are requiring additional services to continue to age well at home. And that is ultimately our goal, is to determine how we can help our older adults age well at home. So with that, Jared, are we ready? Okay, I am going to pause. I do have a couple other items to share later, but I want to invite up folks from Brothers Redevelopment to share about their Capable program. For those of you who don't know or don't recall, they did apply for some of our funding this year. There's still a great deal to work out around that, but we did ask them to come and share their program with us. So if you wouldn't mind, also introduce yourself. Sure. And you're a fellow staff member here, and sure. We'll let you take it.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us today. My name is Jason McCullough. I'm the Director for Home Modification and Repair Programs at Brothers Redevelopment. And my colleague is Kathy McMichael, and she's our Senior Administrator in our program for the home modification and repair programs. And we're here today just to we'll do a real brief overview, a couple slides on Brothers, and then explain, kind of go through what Capable is doing here with the pilot program in the Pikes Peak region. There we go. Great. So Brothers Redevelopment, we're a little over 50 years old. We're a longstanding Colorado nonprofit organization. We work on housing issues, both with affordable housing, housing preservation, access to housing, really anything to do with keeping folks in their homes or housing folks in the various regions we work in. We have a few different silos for that, a lot of different programs. Some of them overlap. Some of them are fairly in one lane only. But you can see we do everything from our Paint-A-Thon program, which is active in the Pikes Peak region, to our Housing Connects hotline, which is statewide, Aging in Place Senior Services, which is also active in the Pikes Peak region. We're also a housing counseling service for the state. We're HUD funded for that. We do housing placement, rental utility, and mortgage assistant at the state level. And we provide and build and develop housing for affordable housing. This last year, we saw a lot of growth. Just some of the high points. I won't go through all these numbers, but we do a lot. We try to try to fill gaps where there's need in different regions we work in. And that goes from anywhere from developing new housing models. Our most recent is a 72 unit building in East Colfax in Denver that is specifically targeted to house on a housing first model folks with a diagnosed brain injury. We're doing that in partnership with the Brain Injury Alliance of Colorado. So there's counseling services on site. It's been very successful thus far. Over 60% of people that are homeless in Colorado have a diagnosed brain injury. That number is probably higher. That's what's been measured so far. But by doing this, we allow people to kind of, we meet them where they're at and are able to help them in a way that they wouldn't be able to in a market type housing situation. Our program, the home modification repair, we cover existing housing issues. That's what we focus on. We work from Weld County all the way down to El Paso, and we're moving into Pueblo and Teller now with the Capable program as well. And we do everything from minor home repair, grab bar installation, trip and hazard fall reduction to roofs, major system overhauls. Again, if it keeps you in your house longer, we're trying to work on that. Our available scope services includes the big four: home safety, accessibility and barrier removal, deferred maintenance, and aging home rehab. And that will tie into the work we do with Capable as well. Specifics include kind of the standard, everything you can think of in a home that isn't flashy. So no skylights, no sprinkler systems, right? That's you're on your own with those. Capable is a program that we've started a pilot program with. It's a Johns Hopkins developed program through their school of nursing. The great part about this program is that it is client driven. So the clients develop their goals with an occupational therapist and RN over a few visits, and then we make a plan to make those goals come to fruition. Oftentimes that includes some rehab or alterations to the house, and that's where our experience in home rehab comes into play. But our ability to work with OTs and RNs has been a great experience for us to kind of see the case management side of what we do, and also to coordinate with those folks and just kind of streamline the process. The criteria for the program, for this one, the current program, we encompass El Paso County, Park and Teller, and also Pueblo. You have to be 18 years old. You have to be a Health First Colorado member, which means you just have Medicaid. You have to live within the South Colorado Springs, Park, Teller, Pueblo, and El Paso County. There is another part of this program that is in the north part of El Paso, and the Colorado Visiting Nurses Association is kind of administering that. But we coordinate with, referrals accordingly. You have to have difficulty performing at least one ADL or and that's a active daily, what does that stand for again? Activities of daily living. There you go. And have difficulty with 2 or more ADLs. And you must score a 7 or better on a cognitive screening, which we do as an intake process. We just make sure that you're able to understand what's going to take place, that you have motivation and are able to achieve the goals that you set out for yourself. And then you have to be hospitalized less than 3 times in the last year, because this is it's about a 5-month process. So we don't want to interrupt that with folks that maybe have a chronic or recurring hospitalization need. The Capable process is one, there's a screening and to determine eligibility. And Kathy does all that for us. She's done a great job. We're approaching 60 enrollees right now this week. So we're hoping to hit that in the next couple of weeks. The program runs for about 4 to 5 months, depending on delays with materials or appointments, whatever. Consists of 4 to 5 visits with an OT, 4 visits with a nurse, and 1 to 2 visits with a handyman. They call it a handy worker, and that's both to make sure that they understand they're there to do work on the house and that it's not a major remodel. It's a do what we need to do to get you to your goals. Then you create 3 goals to prove your ability to perform daily activities, to reduce pain, and to improve your quality of life. You can see here, this is one of our clients. She has She had pain in her back and hands, but was a big gardener beforehand. We were able to just simply build some raised garden beds for her. And now she can both, she's more active, she's outside more, she's strengthening her hands and her back. She doesn't have to bend over. So it's been a great goal that she reached, was she wanted to garden again. Goals can be related to hobbies. You can think outside the box. Again, example, the raised bed. We've had everything from a computer, a sewing, cleaning out an area and setting up a sewing machine area so people can get back into a hobby they're into, which allows you to strengthen hands and increase your focus cognitively, to a lift chair that allows you to get up and down in your living room easier. The key BRA capable objectives for us are to implement this program in Southern Colorado Springs and outside the city limits. So to implement and make sure this goes through, hit the goals that we've decided on with, agreed on with the state. Evaluate evidence-based data. This is one of the really exciting parts of Capables. It provides measurables. There's a depression survey before, there's a depression survey after. So you get measurable outcomes from the program. And then to create healthy and safe home environments, obviously, that's part of our mission at Brothers. To create safe and affordable housing. And then program sustainability. We're hoping to take this model and move it forward and expand it, but we're starting here in the El Paso Pikes Peak region. That is really all we had. It's a fairly simple program. This is one of our happy clients that approved us to take a photo of her in her new lift chair. She's a sweetheart, and I'll take any questions or comments. Yes.
Turn this on. Wondering how you're communicating out with Park County, the senior coalition there.
We've reached out to a lot of. I've met with some folks in Teller County. The senior coalition there. We haven't received any responses from Park County yet. We've had a couple of referrals that. Unfortunately, we're not eligible. In some cases, we have to be able to get our staff, OTs, RNs, and our handy capable staff to the home. And the two folks we looked at Park were fairly remote, and it was we didn't have 4-wheel drive capability to get to the house. But if you have a resource for us, I'm happy to jump back on that horse and try to get into there.
Yeah, I'll switch hats here.
Okay, great.
I'm on the board of the Park County Senior
wonderful.
Coalition.
Okay, yeah.
And we kind of feel left out in the far left there, a lot of things.
No, we'd love to come and do as much work as we could there. That's one of the goals. We haven't reached out in Park, but we've tried to make it available. You're on a mailing list we sent out. We just haven't had any feedback yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get the information from you when we finish here, and I'll pass it
wonderful.
on to our director.
That's great news. Yes. I'll get you a card I'll slip you a card before I leave. Anything else? All right. Well, I thank you so much for your time.
It looks like we have a question online for Maria.
Sorry, I didn't unmute fast enough. I just wanted to clarify something. Did you say that you do work with Colorado VNA's capable program too, and you refer to each other?
We do, yeah. We've had a few times where we've had a referral, or they've received a referral that was in our area, or vice versa. But yeah, it's really wherever it's coming, you're going to get served. We're just trying to make sure we keep the areas that we've agreed upon specific to, so that the data we're giving on outcomes is correct.
Awesome, cool. I think we're going to have all of the areas where we'll probably be working with both of you. So I just wanted to clarify.
Probably, yeah, that's very possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Maria, where are you from? So he knows.
I'm sorry. I'm with the Independence Center. I do community outreach for the Independence Center, and we cover Park, Teller, and El Paso counties.
Great.
Well, thank you for coming. And I just want to remind everybody that this agency is a new provider for us. And so we're really excited to have them come and present a little information, and hopefully they're going to fill a gap in some of the kinds of services that our agency is able to provide. Thank you.
Yeah, we're also very excited. Thank you very much.
Jody, why don't you continue?
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jason and Kathy, for being here to share with us about Brothers Redevelopment. Yeah, so they are new applicants, and so we'll have to continue going through our process, but we do hope to be able to bring them on with some funding. So yes, as part of our trip in DC, we did get to visit with our federal legislators, staff members, and so really exciting to be able to make that connection. One thing that you heard from us several months ago was around the new digital access law, and I say new, but it was technically passed in 22 and has been going through its rulemaking process. We did include that language as part of our annual RFP to make sure that our providers were aware of those requirements. We're still waiting to hear official word from our State Unit on Aging administrators as to what, if anything, we may have to watch for, but there is an expectation that because they are receiving, our providers are receiving state and federal funding, that they will have to be in compliance as well. So more to come on that. And then really just wanted to confirm as well that we do hope to have more of a collaborative effort between our Commission on Aging and our RAC members as well. So that's what I have at the moment, Madam Chair, and I'm open to any questions. Seeing none, I'm going to pass it back
Thank
to
you, Jody. And last on our list here under information items is my report. And one of the things that I forgot to mention earlier is that one of our members will be actually has sent in a letter stating that he will no longer be able to be on the RAC, and that is Jim Woodard. And I just want to he let you know that he's been on our TRS committee, and we want to thank him for his service. And I think that he is deciding to move back to Albuquerque, where he came from when he moved to Colorado. So the only other thing that I want to add on my chair report is, again, I want to thank Laura for that presentation. I participated online. I got to see that, and I think it is really important that we do have a little bit more knowledge about what the Council on Aging is doing, and then what, so that we can integrate our services, because they deal with our legislators a lot. And so it's really important. I know that I did share one piece of information with them, and I don't really know if they were really aware of what our agency does in terms of getting all the proposals and then deciding which proposals we're going to accept. And, as the RAC, the staff does most of the work, but as the RAC, we review those. At least the TRS committee reviews those and makes our recommendations as well as the staff. So I think it was important for them to know all of that, and they seemed to be very, very interested in our 4-year plan. And what we've looked at as our most important pieces. And so because they want to use that in looking at what they do as well, and want to use those ideas as well. Do we have any other questions? Okay, I want to thank everybody. I think Jody's also talked about discussion items. He's talked about the fairs that are coming up. And obviously, we need to let Jody know if we're planning on attending, in terms of sitting behind the tables that the RAC has, or that the area agency has, because it would be considered it would be considered a public meeting, as we learned today. So I think that's very important. The last item on here is our meeting schedule, and you can see on there our next meeting is going to be April 25th. RAC executive committee is going to be on April 3rd. We have those once a month to kind of prepare for what's going to happen at these RAC meetings. And then also included, I think, in the meeting agenda that you got was the PPAG schedule. And I think if you tap on that little thing on the on there, that little kind of box, that little kind of envelope, it'll give you the entire PPAG schedule, PPACG schedule. So thank you. And I think we'll have an adjournment.